Yo, it's me. Welcome to the channel. Every day on this channel, we bring you the greatest stories ever told. And today, we bring you the story of Rapunzel, probably one of the most well-known stories in the world, originating from the Grimm brothers, collected in 1812. It was later adapted by the Danish author Hans Christian Andersen. Both versions are quite similar, but differ in a few key details. We'll be covering the original version by the Grimm brothers today. Once upon a time, a king and queen were blessed with a beautiful baby girl, whom they named Rapunzel. However, when the child was still just a babe, a wicked witch came into the room and stole her away. The witch took the baby back to her castle and raised her as her own, keeping her locked up in a tower with only a frying pan for company. But there was a magical aspect to this tower, for at its top, nestled amongst the clouds, grew an exceptionally long and luscious braid of hair. Every day the witch would climb the tower using this hair, which reached all the way down to the ground. When Rapunzel was 16 years old, she had never seen the outside world and knew nothing of life beyond the tower. She spent her days weaving and sewing, and she spent her nights sleeping in the hair that flowed like a waterfall over her bed. One day while Rapunzel was scrubbing the floor, she heard some commotion outside the tower, and she went to the window to see what was happening. She saw a dashing young prince riding past the tower on his white horse. The sight of the prince awakened something inside of Rapunzel. For the first time in her life, she felt a longing for something she didn't understand, a desire to break free from the confines of the tower and experience the world outside. From that moment on, every time Rapunzel heard the sound of horses' hooves or the rattle of a carriage, she would run to the window to try and catch another glimpse of the outside world. Soon after, the prince passed by the tower again, and he called out to Rapunzel, who was waving to him from her window. When the prince heard the sound of her sweet voice, he stopped his horse and called out to her, asking if someone was up there. But when the witch heard the commotion, she appeared at the window and yelled at the prince, scaring him off. The following year, the prince came by again, and Rapunzel, who had been watching from her window, called out to him. Startled by her beautiful voice, the prince climbed up the tower, using the long strands of her hair. Rapunzel and the prince fell in love, and they made plans to meet secretly every day in the tower. They would talk for hours about the outside world, and Rapunzel would tell the prince all about life in the tower. The two of them dreamed of escaping together and starting a life of their own. Meanwhile, the witch grew suspicious that someone had been visiting Rapunzel, and she began to question her. Rapunzel admitted to her that a handsome prince had been visiting her, and the witch flew into a rage. She dragged Rapunzel to the window and shouted at the prince when he arrived, threatening to cut off her hair if he ever came back. Of course, the prince couldn't hear her, and he continued to climb the tower using her hair. When Rapunzel let the prince in that day, the witch was waiting for them, and she grabbed the prince, pulling him close so that Rapunzel couldn't get away. Then she pushed him out of the window and down the tower. As the prince lay dying, Rapunzel used her long hair to lower herself down the tower, and she cradled the prince in her arms. Though Rapunzel's hair had been cut off by the witch, the magic wasn't gone. So as Rapunzel descended, the hair grew back, wrapping around the prince and lifting him up to the window. The witch had planned to trap the prince forever. But her own magic had betrayed her, and the prince and Rapunzel escaped together, leaving the witch alone in the tower. They lived happily ever after, and that's the end of the story. Now, before we move on to the moral of the story, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon to receive a notification whenever we upload a new video. And if you enjoy our content, please do not forget to support us. Now, what is the moral of the story? The story of Rapunzel teaches us many lessons. It teaches us to be careful of strangers and not to trust them, no matter how nice they may seem. It also teaches us to be wary of those who wish to do us harm, even if they are people we know and love. Finally, it teaches us that even in the darkest of times, hope can be found in the most unexpected of places. Do you agree with the moral of the story? What other lessons do you think the story of Rapunzel teaches us? Share your thoughts with us in the comments below. That's all for today. See you next time.